Driving is a wonderful thing. You, the road, the freedom it gives you, it's a bliss. That is, unless you're in one of those cars that just wants to kill you, then it's pure dread and horror. Hey everyone, I'm Stype, and this is my list of the 7 most life-threatening cars ever.
Number 7.
Here's the problem. All men think that they're good in bed and behind the wheel, but sooner or later everyone will meet their match. In terms of cars, that match is the Porsche Carrera GT, an untamed beast that's challenging to drive even for some professional racing drivers. This gorgeous supercar will lure you with its seductive lines, the best-sounding engine of all times, and will encourage you to press the gas pedal a little deeper. And the fat, grippy tires will assure you that everything is just fine. Until it snaps. Once the grip is gone, you're on your own, because this Porsche, although a product of the modern age, has no driving aids whatsoever. You have to wrestle it into submission. You have to manage the neurotic race-spec clutch, the gears, manage the torque, all of that while surrounded by tire smoke and screeching noises. Best start praying. Come to think of it, they should have just named it La Femme Fatale.
Number 6.
Swedish car industry is known mostly for its love of safety, not speed. So it was quite the shock when Koenigsegg showed up and started breaking speed records left and right. When it came out, the CCR became the most powerful and fastest production car ever, dethroning the long-reigning champion, the McLaren F1. That's one way to make yourself noticed. The secret behind these achievements were the twin-blown 806 horsepower V8, which was way more than any other production car, and a body that was more slippery than an eel coated with WD-40. If you think that's great, think again, because the slipperiness comes in part due to the lack of rear wing, and that means less downforce and less grip. That's bad. After Stig famously crashed the newer CCX version at the Top Gear test track, all future Koenigseggs came out with a pre-installed wing, just to keep those raging rear tires in check. So if you think you can handle the wingless CCR, think again.
Number 5.
Just because Pinto was a budget car, it doesn't mean that it had to be engineered on a budget, which it sadly was. So other than the uninspiring design and cheap materials, Ford Pinto also had one very dangerous design flaw, one that could literally kill you in a hilariously ironic way. If you were rear-ended, your bumper would, instead of making things better, puncture the fuel tank and make it leak, or worse, explode. Once the flaw was discovered, suits at Ford crunched some numbers, did some quick muffs, and concluded that it would be cheaper to settle all legal cases than to recall every car. By the way, the cost to repair one flawed car was $11, but someone at Ford thought their customer's life wasn't worth that much. Luckily, the peer pressure, plummeting sales, and serious damage to the brand finally forced management to issue what was, at the time, the largest recall in automotive history. Funny thing, the ad for the Pinto had the tagline, "Pinto, it leaves you with that warm feeling." Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Number 4.
If you put a powerful engine in a front-wheel drive car, you'll have a problem on your hands. Asking those wheels to do all the steering while putting down the power and fighting for grip is just a bit too much to ask for. So you better come up with some tricked-out front suspension that can handle that fury. Fast Vectra had nothing of the sort. It was just a regular front-wheel drive saloon car with a 280 horsepower turbo V6, upgraded brakes, and bucket seats. Put some lowered springs so it feels bumpy and sporty, and off you go. As a result, it had a serious case of torque steer and even worse case of understeer. That means that the Vectra will steer suddenly and violently under acceleration when you want it to go straight, and it'll go straight when you want it to turn. So why use a steering wheel then? The car will always go into a tree anyway, and someone who you perhaps don't like very much will end up with your organs.
Number 3.
These days, the Porsche 911 is a synonym for cold German precision and efficiency. No fooling around, nothing left unchecked. It's a serious performance car. But it wasn't always like that. Ever since it first came out, the 911 had its engine in the wrong place, hanging behind the rear axle like some pendulum, which was severely offsetting the weight balance. The newer models got the hang of this problem, and now they handle like a dream, but back in the day, such layout had a very dangerous characteristic. If the rear end lost the traction and the ass started swinging, you were done, son. But the worst of all was the 911 Turbo, the Widowmaker. The primitive 70s turbocharging technology had a lot of lag, meaning that the extra surge of power was always sneaky but violent. So if you're going through the corner while trying to control this swinging ass and then the extra boost sneaks up on you,
surprise, motherfucker,
might as well just give up.
Number 2.
TVR refuses to put any driving aids in their cars because, as they say, it'll help you drive better, and then you'll become overconfident, and then you'll kill yourself. Well, that just sounds like we don't have money to include that, but with extra steps. This philosophy makes all TVRs quite deadly, but none as much as the Speed 12, a car that weighs less than 1,000 kilos but has enough power to break the dyno machine rated at 1,000 horsepower. Peter Wheeler, an experienced racing driver and a CEO of TVR, took the finished prototype for a test drive and concluded that it was just too powerful for mere mortals. The very next day, the car was canceled, all the deposits were returned, and all cars were dismantled so they could be used as spares for the racing version. All but this one, rebadged as the Cerbera Speed 12. It was sold to a worthy buyer, personally selected from the candidates by Peter Wheeler himself. This particular Cerbera 12 had an engine detuned to only 800 horsepower. The body featured a full-on racing aero kit for improved grip, and yet it was still described by Evo magazine as absolutely terrifying.
Number 1.
The UK law said, if a vehicle has only 3 wheels and weighs under 450 kilos, it's not a car. It's a 3-wheel motorcycle. Reliant used that loophole to make a budget 3-wheel car that you could drive with a motorcycle license only. And you also had to pay less tax on it. Great for the post-war depression times, right? No, not great. One look at it and you'll know immediately why this car is at number 1. It has only 1 wheel at the front. If you make any kind of emergency movement in the Reliant Robin, the mass could shift just outside the wheelbase, tipping you into a peeing dog position. Drive a little faster and you'll be rolling and tumbling and screaming in a budget car made of fiberglass. None of this would have happened had they put 2 wheels up front and 1 in the rear, but that required some re-engineering which would make it more expensive. And that was the end of that. Also, a wheel bump in the middle of the trunk would be somewhat inconvenient too. Most shocking of all, they sold well. Poor people. Anyway, can you guess these other killer cars? Did you guess them? Write in the comments and make sure you vote on which topic I should do next. Links will be everywhere. And